The free agent interview period is now 24 hours in, and many NHL free agents have been speaking with other NHL teams. So in today's video, we're going to do a rundown of all the latest rumors around where some of these pending free agents might be signing. We'll get into all that coming up next. Welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. Now, we have a lot to cover today. There's a lot of pending unrestricted free agents who apparently have been meeting with a lot of other teams. So let's jump right in here and get down to who's talking to what teams. I want to get started here with Matt Duchene. Now, it was mentioned on the latest 31 Thoughts podcast with Elliot Friedman with special guest Chris Johnson of Sportsnet, indicating he feels it's 100% certain that Duchene is going to Nashville. Now, of course, he doesn't have a crystal ball, but based on all the intel that he has and his knowledge of Duchene and the situation, that once the PK Subban trade went down and they freed up a significant amount of cap space, that it's all but guaranteed that Matt Duchene goes to Nashville. He's been wanting to play there for a long time. It has been speculated that Nashville was one of the teams that was really close to landing him via trade when he ended up being traded out of Colorado to Ottawa. So we all know he already owns property there. He loves country music. He spends a lot of time in Nashville during his off time. So I really think it's pretty safe to say Matt Duchene will become a Nashville Predator. Not sure exactly what the contract's going to look like, but I do believe it's going to be somewhere around $9.5 to $10 million would be my best guess based on other contracts that we've seen signed so far in this offseason. But that's the latest intel here on Matt Duchene. Now, jumping over to one of his soon-to-be likely former teammates in Artemi Panarin, it's been reported here as well that he did indeed meet with the Colorado Avalanche. Now, the Avalanche are a team with a lot of cap space and a team to kind of keep your eye out for this free agent season. I do think it's quite possible they try to add some secondary scoring. As we know, the Avalanche have really improved a lot the past couple of years, gotten to the playoffs, made a little bit of noise in the playoffs, and they've really done that a lot without having a lot of depth scoring. I mean, their second line just hasn't produced at the rate that it needs to. After the big three of Rantanen, McKinnon, and Landeskog, they really struggle a little bit. To add another high-scoring forward into the mix here would certainly be a key piece for them, something that they're very interested in doing. Of course, there's no guarantee they're going to land Panarin, but obviously they're showing interest. He did meet with them, and obviously he wouldn't meet with them if he wasn't at least interested. So I do think it's a possibility that they may obviously offer him a big contract and see what happens. But either way, Panarin has met with the Avalanche. He's expected to be meeting with the Florida Panthers, I believe, sometime today is what the information that was out there. But either way, the Panthers and the Avalanche and the New York Islanders are another team as well, between Bobrovsky and Panarin, that are likely going to be trying to get into the mix here, which many believe is why the Islanders have not re-signed goalie Robin Lehner as of yet. I think they're trying to investigate the possibility of landing these two guys and are probably going to circle back to Lehner if they don't feel they can bring in Bobrovsky. At least that's just a gut feeling on my part, and I've seen some other speculation about that as well. But when it comes to Panarin right now, I'm going to say the Islanders, the Panthers, and the Avalanche are the main three they're going to talk to. I wouldn't rule out the Rangers as well, but I still think the Panthers are the front runners, but those seem to be the teams right now that he's expected to be talking to here during the free agent interview period. Jumping back to Sergei Bobrovsky here as well, he is expected, along with Panarin, to be meeting with the Florida Panthers here sometime today. I don't know exactly what time that's going down, but either way, there has been less talk on Bobrovsky with other teams, so I think he's pretty set on wanting to go to Florida. But of course, the Panthers have some decisions to make there. They're still waiting an official confirmation on the future of Roberto Luongo. They have to consider trading or buying out James Reimer as well to kind of free up a roster spot and some cap space, although they have plenty of cap space right now, but they could certainly use some more depending on what kind of contracts they end up dishing out to some of these free agents here. So I guess we'll see what happens with their other goalies, but the main team that Bobrovsky is linked to right now still is the Florida Panthers. Next, let's jump over here to San Jose Sharks captain Joe Pavelski. Now, I wouldn't rule out a return to San Jose, but it appears as though all the reports are looking like that the term is a sticking point between Little Joe and the Sharks. Now, I believe both sides would love to get a deal done. I don't think there's a lack of interest on either side for him to stay, but at the same time, he's got to explore his options here and make sure he gets the best deal for himself. And like I said, I think a return to the Sharks is his primary focus here. But now that the window is open and he is expected to at least talk with other teams and see what else is out there, a couple teams that he's been linked to. One is the Chicago Blackhawks, who are very interested in adding a veteran like Pavelski. You've also got the Minnesota Wild and the Arizona Coyotes. Now, I know the Coyotes are a team that's been linked to a lot of the top free agents, as well as potentially making some trades. It's been clear through the rumor mill, at least, that the Coyotes and John Shaker are interested in making some big moves and bringing in some more scoring as they desperately need it. So we'll see. I mean, Pavelski could be a good fit there. I'm not sure that I really see a lot of interest on his part. So if he leaves San Jose, it's going to have to be a pretty sweet opportunity, in my opinion. So I guess we'll keep an eye on the San Jose Sharks. If we see them making other trades, freeing up more money, then obviously Pavelski's going to be one of their main targets here to keep in the fold. But like I said, Chicago, Minnesota, and Arizona appear to be the three teams that are showing interest that he is expected to possibly meet with here during this interview period. Next up, let's take a look at defenseman Tyler Myers, who's one of the bigger names on the defense portion of the free agent list here, along with Jake Gardiner. They're probably the top two guys available. Both are expected to meet in Vancouver. We did get confirmation that Myers and his agent did indeed meet with the Canucks group on Sunday. Not sure how well the negotiations went or how well that interview went, but it is believed he's going to be looking for a 7-year contract north of $6 million, probably closer to $7 million is what's being reported out there. I'd be a little leery if I was Vancouver. That's a contract I'm not sure I'd want to be getting into. I would be more comfortable looking at a player like Jake Gardiner, who's a terrific skater, good puck mover, and I just think longer term is going to be a better player than Myers. But either way, I'd be cautious of overpaying a free agent defenseman. There might be some better deals out there, maybe via trade or whatnot, for Jim Benning to have a look at. But he did indeed meet with the Canucks. I wouldn't completely rule out a possibility of him returning to Winnipeg, especially, again, like the other teams we've mentioned. If we hear of the Jets making a trade, which more than likely, if they do, would involve forward Matthew Perreault, possibly Nikolai Ehlers. That's still out there a lot in the rumor mill, too. If we hear them freeing up some space, it very well could be to bring back a guy like Tyler Myers or one of the other defensemen there, Ben Sherratt. So let's jump over next to defenseman Jake Gardiner, since we just mentioned him here, along with Tyler Myers. I think they're by far the two top UFA defensemen on the market right now. I think the odds are of him staying in Toronto are really slim. I just don't see how they can make it work salary cap wise, but there should be no shortage of interest, including Vancouver, but plenty of other teams. We've heard from Chris Johnson, he thought the Detroit Red Wings might be interested. We've heard the Florida Panthers. We've heard the Minnesota Wild. We've heard the Montreal Canadiens. I do think there's going to be a lot of interest out there on a guy like Jake Gardiner. Say what you want about him from the defensive side of the game. I realize he's had some bad moments in some key game sevens, but he's a terrific skater. He really moves the puck well. It generates a lot of offense, and that is a little bit hard to find here. So I do think he's going to get himself a pretty good contract, and there'll be no shortage of interest. But we'll see where Jake Gardiner goes. Unlikely return to Toronto, but there's many teams, including the ones I just mentioned, that are expected to try to meet with him here during the interview period. Now, next up here is another potential team captain on the move, and that's Islanders captain Anders Lee. In recent interviews, it sounds like Anders Lee is a little bit frustrated that he is not signed here as of yet, and it really seems to be the sticking point between himself and the Islanders is the term in the contract, not so much the dollars. I really think Lou Lamoriello wants to retain his captain. They really seem to appreciate the kind of player he is. It's a big part of that team. Had a pretty solid year as captain as well, so he's really an important piece in that leadership group. But right now, they just don't want to commit too long a term to a player where he's at in his career at his age. So obviously, it kind of makes sense from both sides why he wants the term. He wants the long-term stability and the job protection, basically. And whereas the Islanders don't want to end up with a bad contract down the road. So we'll see what happens here. But Anders Lee is a player that very well could, unfortunately, find himself leaving the island. Now, as I had mentioned, the Islanders apparently do have reported interest here in Panarin and Bobrovsky. And as reporter Michael Russo has reported, he feels that might be one of the holding points here as well, why Lee is not signed. Like I mentioned with Robin Lehner, obviously, if they're going to feel like they can bring those two guys in, then Lehner and Lee would likely have to go to make that happen for it to really make a lot of sense here. So obviously, they're probably taking their time with these contract negotiations to see if there's any possibility if they can bring in these other duo here to kind of replace them. So obviously, they're going to want to have interviews, see how those go, see if they feel they have a shot before they come back and really push further in negotiations with the current two guys of their club. So I guess that could be holding things up. I mean, Russo could have some very valid points there. So I guess we will see. Now, like I mentioned here with Joe Pavelski, I think Anders Lee as well would have interest from very similar teams like the Hawks or the Minnesota Wild. I can see both those teams trying to add a veteran scoring player, even Arizona as well. Not sure exactly where the player's first preference would be to go to, but all those teams are looking for scoring forwards and will likely be able to accommodate the type of contracts that they're looking for. So I do think it's still quite possible that Lee returns to the Islanders. I'm not completely sold on the fact of the Islanders landing Bobrovsky and Panarin. So obviously, if that doesn't happen, and I know soon enough before these teams can officially sign other deals. I can see them coming back and pushing harder to get those players signed. I mean, we basically heard Robin Lehner kind of out pleading in the public here saying, just give me a contract. I don't care short term, long term. I just want to stay with the Islanders. Had a great time last season, and I really don't want to go to anywhere else. Lehner's even said like he has no plans to speak with other teams. So we'll see where that goes, but it looks as though the Panarin Bobrovsky situation might be holding up those two getting signed. Now, another free agent forward who's going to be interesting to watch too is Gustav Nyquist of the San Jose Sharks. I do feel that there's low odds of him returning to San Jose. There's just no way they can afford him right now. Obviously, they're having a hard time working out a deal with Pavelski, as I had mentioned, so I don't see Nyquist getting signed either. So there's going to be some turnover in the Sharks roster for sure. I do think as well that there's going to be some teams that are going to show some interest in a guy like Nyquist. He's a pretty good skater. He's got a good experience. He's been a fairly productive forward throughout his career. I think a team like the Oilers would likely show interest. Obviously, they need scoring wingers, and that's what he can provide. The contract shouldn't be too crazy, so it might be able to fit into what they need. Of course, I wouldn't completely rule out Montreal either. Obviously, they have his old buddy Thomas Tatar, who ended up going there through Vegas after he left Detroit. So obviously, those two guys played well together. They know each other quite well. He could speak to Tatar about what it's like to play in Montreal as well if he wants to get like an inside scoop. And they need the type of player, in my opinion, that he can be. So that wouldn't be completely something I would rule out here as well. And the same goes for the Nashville Predators. They're looking to add more scoring. Obviously, I mentioned the link to Duchesne. Depending on how much that contract ends up being, what other moves they make, they may find it difficult to add another free agent like a Nyquist, but I can see that possibly being something they're interested in, especially if they move out another contract and can free up a little bit more space. I do think they're still trying to dangle Kyle Turris here a little bit as well, so if they end up moving him, I can see them maybe dipping into the free agent pool that way if they can free up a little bit more cap space. So that is all your latest updates and all the latest free agent rumors here. There's going to be lots of rumblings here over the coming days as all these players can talk to other teams, have interviews, and try to decide where their future lies here. So there should be plenty more. So stay tuned to the channel as we get all the latest breaking news to discuss further. If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, subscribe for more content just like this one, and give the video a thumbs up as well if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.